Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. As always, I'm your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and we're here to discuss recent world events that are affecting the Muslim world, the most deeply, of course, with the assassination by Israel of one of the leaders of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh. And this assassination came at the same time as an assassination of Fuad Shukr, who was one of the commanders of Hezbollah in Lebanon. So Israel is assassinating everyone. Israel is just pulling out all the stops and saying, you know, we're going to go all out. We don't care what anyone says. We don't care about any limits or red lines that are placed on us. We are going to attack countries within their own territories. We're not even going to bother attacking the proxies. We're going to go for the big kahuna and go and strike Iran and assassinate the head of Hamas in Iran. So what was Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas, doing in Iran? He was attending the inauguration of the newly elected president, who was elected, Pezeshkian, who was elected after the former President Ibrahim Raisi was killed in a helicopter crash about over a month ago. So this is the situation now. And as we can see, Israel wants total war. Israel wants absolute chaos in the Middle East. It wants a massive conflagration of in the region, and it wants to draw the U.S. into this massive regional war between itself and Iran. And this is what Netanyahu, when he came to Congress, and we analyzed his speech to Congress, this is what we discussed and we predicted. Many predicted it. It wasn't really hard to predict, but Netanyahu made it clear. He signaled that he wants war. He wants to go mano a mano with Iran, but not exactly mano a mano, because maybe not mano a mano Israel versus Iran, mano a mano U.S. versus Iran. The U.S. military, the U.S. warships, the U.S. bombers, U.S. soldiers going and dying for Israel against the Iranian force, the Islamic Republic of Iran. So today, inshallah, in this episode, we're going to analyze this situation. We're going to talk about Israel's overall strategy. You know, what is really the goal of just geopolitics in general of Israel? What do they plan? Why are they pressing this at this time? Who gave the green light for this assassination? And much more. So this will be a very interesting episode, inshallah. And I hope you stay and tune in for the whole thing. In the meantime, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Very important that you get on our email list. We're not going to spam the list, don't worry. But it's very important so that we can stay in touch with you in case we're banned from social media because we're talking about certain countries, certain religions. You can talk about a lot of religions and you can talk about a lot of countries, including the United States, including Christianity. But some religions and certain countries, you could potentially be banned. This is why we need you to subscribe to the newsletter so that we can stay in touch if that ever happens. We pray that it doesn't, but you have to be prepared. So subscribe to that newsletter. You can see the link as well in the description on MuslimSkeptic.com. And also like the video and make a super chat, because I will be reading super chats. And usually I tend to read 90% of them, as long as they're relevant to the topic of the show. Happy to address questions or to read your comments. So include that super chat. It helps the show a great deal and the costs of putting this show together. So we appreciate that. Okay, so the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. So one of the things to note is that Israel has assassinated his whole family. His children, his grandchildren even have been assassinated by Israel, and this is how Israel operates. Specifically, their intelligence, Mossad, has this mandate to assassinate and kill in violation of all international law, in violation of all, the Geneva Conventions even. Israel believes that it can just go around the world and assassinate whoever it doesn't like, whoever it believes deserves assassination. It's hard to see any other country have such a long record of being involved in this kind of espionage and killing at this scale. So Israel is unique in that regard. And this is just an objective fact. And we're going to look at some of these details. But what we want to start off with is the way that this assassination took place. It's quite shocking. And this New York Times article came out just today. And it is saying, how was Israel able to assassinate Ismail Haniyeh in Iran? In Iran. So not in Qatar, not in any other part of the world, in Iran. And not only in Iran, but at one of the compounds, one of the most guarded compounds of the Revolutionary Guard of the Iranian regime. So he was staying at this compound in a specific room. And the report from the New York Times says, based on some internal sources within Iran itself and U.S. intelligence, they're saying that this was an explosive device that was specifically for the room that he was staying at. Now, the strange thing is that they're saying that this bomb was planted months in advance, weeks or months in advance. There was a bomb in this room. And then what happens? The day he comes and he stays in this one particular room, it goes off. Somehow it's triggered. They know, okay, he's in the room now, and it goes off. Now, this is not a huge explosion that destroys the compound. This is just the room. So even there was another Palestinian Hamas official in the room, in the next room, next door. And he wasn't even injured or killed. So that's how contained this bomb was and how specific it was for the intended target. So if you want, the whole, all the rest of the details, go read this article from the New York Times. And we should take anything that the New York Times says with a grain of salt. Clearly, they have a major pro-Zionist bias, a pro-Israel bias, of course. But this raises a lot of questions. It seems plausible. It seems, okay, maybe Israel does have this capability. How else would they? Some of the early speculation was that this was a drone strike. Maybe there was an Israeli drone identified. Haniyeh was in the room and made the strike. Or there was a missile sent. But the damage was not significant enough to indicate that kind of strike. And also, Iran does have air defense capabilities. So that seems less likely. There were some reports that, Ismail Haniyeh was using WhatsApp and Israel was able to track him and target him because of his use of WhatsApp. I find that not very plausible when I first heard it, and it seems like that was just something that people said. It wasn't just made up. It wasn't confirmed or anything. So this is very embarrassing for Iran. This is deeply embarrassing that you have a distinguished guest, the head of the Palestinian resistance, coming to visit for the inauguration of the new president. And he's being protected by the Revolutionary Guard, which is the highest level in terms of the armed forces of the Islamic Republic. And he's staying at their secure compound in Tehran, in the capital, not even like in a border region, in the capital, at the heart of Iran. And Israel is able to take him out. So this raises a few questions in the sense of, well, why did Israel choose this moment to assassinate Ismail Haniyeh? Well, it's, again, deeply embarrassing for Iran. It also sends a message to all of the proxies of Iran that you're not safe. Wherever you are, you're not safe. Iran can't protect you. Iran cannot save you from, if we want to take you out at any time, we can do so. That's the message that is being sent. Obviously, it does raise the question of, well, how infiltrated is the Iranian government itself, right? How infiltrated? So if this creates distrust. If I am, in one of these proxies, hypothetically speaking, then, well, how could this assassination happen? Someone in the Iranian government is compromised. Someone in the Revolutionary Guard is compromised. That person giving up my location, giving up, the location of our operatives, etc., etc. So this is going to create chaos. It's going to create, obviously, internally a lot of problems for Iran and its proxies because the level of trust is going to be shattered. That's one reason that Israel could pick this moment to assassinate Haniya as opposed to when he was in Qatar or in another part of the world. They waited until he was in Iran. Could they have known that he would be in that particular room? Like, has Mossad bugged or put bombs in every single room? So, whichever room we want to blow up at any time, we can just press a button. Obviously, Israel has assassinated Iranian scientists, nuclear physicists in the past, and they have, different methods of doing that. But this was something new. I don't think we've heard of this method, pre-planned bomb placed weeks in advance in the room, in the Revolutionary Guard's compound. This is something new, and it raises a lot of these troubling questions for Iran and Iran's allies. So that's point number one, is that, well, how compromised really is Iran? That's point number one. It also undermines the possibility of Iran... what the heck is this? Sorry. Yeah. So this pop-up comes on my screen from Windows. I get this Windows update, and now news just flashes on the screen from a Windows update. Anyway, so the other goal that is achieved with this assassination is that it undermines the possibility of Iran-U.S. diplomacy. Obviously, Israel does not want the Iranian regime to get close to the U.S. in any kind of diplomatic relation. The U.S. intelligence claims that it had no foreknowledge of this attack or this assassination. So that's, how much you can trust that, I'm not sure. Also, this is going to provoke a big response from Iran. If they assassinated Haniya in Qatar, it wouldn't have been as explosive. But since they assassinated in this particular way in Iran, it forces Iran to respond because they're embarrassed. And there are questions about, what's going on. Is there, how united is the Iranian regime? Who are the traitors? Who are the spies at the highest level, basically, at the level of the Revolutionary Guard? So they have to react in a big way, and it's probably going to be a coordinated response because obviously Hezbollah was also attacked, or Fuad Shukr of Hezbollah was also assassinated. So they know that there's going to be a big response, and it's going to be a coordinated response with Iran, Hezbollah, and possibly the Houthis as well. And that's what Israel wants. Israel wants the fireworks. Israel wants the smoke. Israel wants Iran to overreact so that they can make a justification for the U.S. to be involved. And that's the goal. That is the goal. Israel wants to escalate as much as possible. With Lebanon, okay, that has been going on. They've been trading rockets or missiles for months now. But they want Iran to get directly engaged with a big retaliation so that they can make the case to the U.S. that, okay, is this enough for you? Is this enough for you to commit to a prolonged engagement war with Iran? And the U.S. is right now in a very vulnerable position. Very vulnerable. Why? Because the president is basically a sitting duck. Biden, it's not really clear, if he is healthy and able to do anything presidential. It seems like others in his cabinet are the ones who are running the show. There's confusion. Okay, is Kamala have any say in things? She seems to be signaling a opposition to escalation, as we discussed when she met with Netanyahu. She was making a lot of statements about the importance of ceasefire, the importance of stopping the humanitarian crisis. She was even naming Palestinian victims by name. So she's signaling or counter signaling escalation. But there's an election coming up, and Donald Trump could perhaps be the next president. If Donald Trump is the president, he's signaling all-out war. We need to wipe Iran off the map. We need to do what we can to finish the job, referring to Palestinians, maybe referring to the entire Middle East. So this is Israel wants to make significant moves right now so that the upcoming president, whether it's Kamala, whether it's Donald, will have no choice. Will have no choice in the matter, won't have the opportunity to have his or her own policy prescriptions on the Middle East. Like, you will just have to act. You'll have to go with what has already been decided because of the escalation that has already been created. So that's what strategically Israel, this is why all of this is happening now. It has to happen now. For Israel to be able to corner the U.S. and force them into supporting them in this war with Lebanon, with Iran, with Yemen, and everyone else. So this is what is happening. Now, what do you guys think? Do you have any thoughts? I'll pause right now to read the super chat so that we can get your perspective as well. Or I'll just read the comments. Rania, appreciate it. Your super sticker. That's very generous of you. Okay, let's just read comments here. Okay, this is a good comment. This is probably from an electronic fly in Dubai right now. Iran has killed far more Muslims than Israel, exponentially. Is this true? Like, do you really believe this? This is, there are non-electronic flies, like non-bots who think this, but it's so stupid that it's hard to understand how anyone can think this. Because it really says that you don't understand anything about history, and you don't understand anything about politics, you don't understand anything about recent history. If you think that Iran has killed more Muslims than Israel, are you serious? So we can go through an entire history lesson, actually, and talk about how Zionists were involved with the destruction of the Ottoman Caliphate. How Zionists were the ones who pushed the United Kingdom, or Britain rather, to engage the Ottoman Empire and ultimately defeat the Ottoman Empire and create the division of the Ottoman Empire and the end of the Caliphate. This is at the hands of, or the influence of, Zionists, and Zionists are proud of that. Zionists are proud. They're advertising how they're involved in the destruction of the Ottoman Caliphate. And there was an article that I just read, let me bring it on the screen. This is from the Mosaic, Advancing Jewish Thought. The Jewish spies who helped the British defeat the Ottoman Empire in World War I. The achievements and sacrifice of a family of Palestinian Jews helped to secure both victory in war and Great Britain's endorsement of Zionism. This is just as an example, something that I just came across. So even from the beginning, the end of the caliphate, 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago, who's involved? It's Zionists. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two is Israel's long-standing policy of initiating assassinations, coups, creating civil war, inciting conflict, a divide and conquer strategy to keep the entire Middle East embroiled in fighting and conflict internally so that they neutralize any threats. This has been Israel's policy from the very beginning. From the very beginning of the creation of that terrorist state. And I've mentioned the Yinon Plan. Historically, this is a plan that came out in 1980, where Zionists were strategizing and made it very explicit. They published this article in Hebrew in a Hebrew journal about how their strategy is to constantly inflame sectarian conflict, ethnic conflict between these countries within the Muslim world so that there is no opportunity to focus on the common threat, which is the Zionist state. So we want war between Shia and Sunni. We want constant civil war between Salafi and Sufi. We want constant fighting between Arab and Persian, between even Egyptian and Sudanese. Every single ethnic group needs to be broken into small nationalities, divide and conquer, and then constantly inflame war, aggression, belligerence, so that they internally destroy each other. This is their explicit plan, and they have been implementing it. And idiots like whoever this person was, who I forgot the person's name, who says that, Iran has killed more Muslims than Israel. You are dumb. I'm sorry, but you are stupid. There's no other nice way to put it. So we're going to talk more about assassination after I get finished making this point. But look at the Cost of War project. This is a good website. From Brown University. It tallies the human toll of all, and this is only in the past 20 years, basically from the beginning of the war on terror, the quote-unquote war on terror since 9/11. And it's calculating the human toll, it's calculating the cost in terms of the U.S. budget, but the human toll in terms of direct deaths, and this is probably a massive underestimate, almost 1 million. Almost 1 million direct deaths from the U.S. that the U.S. has killed Muslims in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and other Muslim countries. Libya I'm not sure if it's included in this, Libya. So that's direct deaths. What about indirect deaths from things like starvation, from things like disease, lack of medical treatment? Indirect deaths, 4.7 million, including the direct deaths. So almost 5 million Muslims in the past 20 years. Has Iran killed 5 million Muslims? You geniuses here? You genius, electronic flies, bots, fire up Wikipedia over there in Dubai and see, or Riyadh, and see if Iran has killed 5 million Muslims. So that is the toll. And this is U.S. figures, what the U.S. has killed. But we know that the U.S. isn't acting autonomously. We know that the U.S. is not acting on purely its own interests. It's also influenced by who? By the Zionist state, by the Zionist lobby. And there's no question about that. We know that Israel lied, provided false intelligence to the United States in order to impeach Iraq and Saddam Hussein and drag the U.S. into an invasion of Iraq on the false premise that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Where did that false intelligence come from? That false intelligence came from Israel. And why did Israel want to take out Iraq? Because Saddam was their enemy. Saddam was their enemy and threatened them, and threatened Israel, threatened Israel's interests. So they had to go. He had to be eliminated. He had to be liquidated. And that's what they did. They didn't do it themselves. They did it with their attack dog, the U.S. government. So when you see in the past 20 years, and that was the first major engagement, also Afghanistan, obviously the Taliban is no fan of the Israeli state, of the Zionist state. So that war as well, starting from 2001, 2002, 2003, these years, and in the next 20, 21 years, 5 million Muslims killed, murdered. The blood of that is on whose hands? People displaced. Almost 40 million Muslims have been displaced. 38 million people have been displaced by the post-9/11 wars in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and the Philippines. Okay, this is their war on terror. Their war on terror is a war on Muslims. And we're just talking about the death count. We're not even talking about the ideological war on Islam. Like, you're complaining about things like the Aurat March in Pakistan. You're complaining about things like the crackdown in Bangladesh against anyone who favors Islam or wants conservative traditional Islam. You want to talk about the policies that are put in place, the changing of textbooks in Egypt, the changing of textbooks in Saudi to make them more moderate. This is an ideological war on traditional Islam. Who's behind that? Who's pushing for that? Yes, the U.S. And who else? You know Rand, right? You know Rand, the think tank, the official think tank of the U.S. military. Rand is full of these Zionists, these neocon Zionists, and their whole policy is divide and conquer, as we discussed along the lines of the Yinon Plan, create civil war, inflame conflict, embroil the entire Middle East, where Muslims are killing other Muslims. And then, number two, you have to secularize Islam. How do you secularize Islam? You promote reform. You promote feminism, you promote democracy, you make sure to eradicate Sharia, you eradicate the concept of jihad, you eradicate the concept of khilafah. That's the ideological war. Is Iran behind that? Is Iran doing that? I'm asking, some of you idiots to provide proof of that. No, it's the U.S. and it's Israel. So show me where Iran has killed. So the other thing to keep in mind, you can't separate the death of Sunnis at the hands of Iran from the Yinon Plan. You can't separate it from the machinations of Israel, because that is part of Israel's whole plan, is that Iran kills Sunnis and Sunnis kill Shia. And that has happened. That has happened. Sunni Iran has been responsible, or Sunni Iraq rather. Sunni Iraq was responsible for the death of around 500,000 Shia Muslims, Iranian Shia Muslims. This was the Iran-Iraq war in the 80s. One of the biggest, most costly wars in history, let alone the Middle East. Who was trying to inflame that war and funding both sides, arming both sides, so that both sides would destroy each other? It wasn't only Sunnis who died in that. Shia also were killed by the hundreds of thousands. Chemical weapons were used by Sunnis against Shia in Iran. chemical weapons. Supplied by who? Supplied by whom? So don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. And this is why I've constantly been advocating alliance, Muslim alliance. And the people who are most afraid of Shia and Sunni Muslims allying with each other is Israel. They are so scared and petrified that Shia and Sunni Muslims will realize that we are strong in a united front as allies against Zionist aggression. Because guess what? Lebanon, how many Sunnis are going to die in Lebanon? It's not going to just be Shia Hezbollah that's going to die in Lebanon. Who's going to be when Israel starts making moves against the Sinai in Egypt? Are there any Shia in the Sinai Peninsula? No, those are Sunnis. How about in Iraq? How about in northern Arabian Peninsula, north of Saudi, southern Syria? Those are, there's some Shia, a lot of Sunnis. So Israel doesn't care. Israel doesn't care if you're Sunni or Shia. You are living on the land that they believe God has given them as an inheritance, according to the Bible. So it doesn't matter if you are Shia, if you're Sunni, if you're a Canaanite. It doesn't matter. They want you eliminated, and they have aims and plans to eliminate you. And you have morons here in the chat who are saying, well, actually, Iran is the biggest enemy. I much prefer have Israel just wipe out everything because that's far better than Iran doing anything. Look, I'm not a fan of the Iranian regime. I've said this many times because what these electronic bots flies in Dubai and the Gulf will claim is that, Daniel is an Iranian agent. No, I'm not an Iranian agent. Now, this is a racist kind of critique because I have Iranian background, but I'm Sunni. I just don't agree with Zionism like these bots do, like these bots in some of these countries do, who are trying to create conflict and trying to undermine the resistance against Israel. Look, if you have a problem with me speaking and saying that we need this allyship, if you have a problem with me, then you also have a problem with Ismail Haniyeh, right? Because Ismail Haniyeh, why was he in Iran? Is he a traitor? Is he an Iranian agent too? Is all of the Palestinian resistance, are they secretly Shia? That's what the Medkhali bootlickers will say, these dogs. That's what they will claim. They will say that, I'm happy. I'm celebrating that Ismail Haniyeh has been assassinated. They're hand in hand with the Zionists, drinking their Starbucks Frappuccinos, eating their McDonald's. They're celebrating. These Medkhali agents, and if you don't know what a Medkhali is, it's basically a Muslim Zionist. But Israel has been able to control, unfortunately, some of our Muslim countries through these puppet dictators, these puppet regimes, what they call their allies, what they're calling the Abraham Alliance. That's what Netanyahu said in Congress in his address. So you have these Medkhalis who are celebrating. They're loving this. I posted some of the examples. Celebrating the death of Palestinian leadership. This, Faisal, who knows who this is. Ismail Haniyeh got assassinated. Best news I got in the morning in a while. Medkhali, Here is another account. Bras with the Saudi flag. It appears some Saudis are really happy with Netanyahu these days. This Saudi is praising him and even prepared him a coffee. Pouring coffee for Netanyahu. They're so happy in Saudi, supposedly. Yeah, you know who's happy in Saudi? These traitors. These hypocrites. these Madkhalis, which they're a deviant sect, they're a deviant group. You want to talk about deviance? Yeah, I'll accept, and I know that Shia are Ahlul Bid'ah. You know, they are a deviant sect, and the Iranian regime, their understanding of Islamic government is deviant. Wilayat al-Faqih, if you don't know Wilayat al-Faqih, this was the theory forwarded and advanced by Khomeini, and it means rulership by the jurist. Faqih, or the jurist, the scholarly jurist. And this is a disaster. You know, this is a new invention. Rule by the ulama. Rule by the ulama should be the rulers of the nations. Who has this idea? Yes, a ruler should be knowledgeable, or yes, a ruler should be abiding by the Sharia. But wilayat al-faqih, where is this coming from? So I'm a critic of Shia. I'm a critic of the Iranian regime. But I understand that they are right now the biggest opposition to this terror state of Israel that is in the middle of genociding our Palestinian brothers and sisters and threatening not only to take over and control Masjid al-Aqsa, number one, but to expand their control into the entire region and create war that will kill hundreds of thousands of more Muslims, if not millions more Muslims. In the past 20 years, they managed to kill 5 million and displace almost 40 million. What are they going to be able to do in the next 20 years? Is it going to be another 10 million? Is it going to be 20 million? How many more people have to die? How many more Muslim blood has to be shed for people to understand, for Muslims to understand that this is much more significant? This is much more significant than debating Shia and Sunni. That's a debate that can happen. We should have that debate. We can talk about why, for example, I was raised Shia, but I became Sunni. What were the reasons for that? Why do I consider them to be a deviant sect? We can have that. That's fine. But we have to ally. We have to be allied against this existential threat. Not only is Muslim blood being shed, but also the attack on Islam as a religion. Because so much, look at, we covered this already. The Guardian covered it, about millions of dollars that the Israeli government is pumping in the West to promote anti-Islam narratives. Anti-Islam narratives to demonize Islam. Do you notice how on Twitter or on social media, there's been an explosion of these accounts talking about how Islam is a PDF religion? It's gone out of control. Those are Zionists behind that. That's literally the Netanyahu government funneling millions of dollars in order to push that kind of demonization of Islam and Muslims in the West. Why? Because they want to turn public support in favor of Israel and against the Palestinians. It's very simple to understand. This is not complicated. And they're able to spread that kind of hate completely unimpeded. There's no censorship of that kind of hate. There's no, accounts being banned or censored for rank, open animosity and hatred towards Islam, towards Muslims. Some of these dirtbags, like Tommy Robinson, Zionist shill, who was banned, he's allowed back onto social media, and his account is being boosted to shill for Israel by pushing anti-Muslim hate and trying to inflame animosity against Muslims and Islam. Meanwhile, instead of focusing on this threat, instead of focusing on this issue, we have people saying, oh, Iran is killing more Muslims than Israel. Like the most stupid kind of unfactual claims being made. So that is my response to that one comment. And I'm sure there's many others. But let's talk about Israel's assassination of other Muslim leaders. We had an entire video on it. The disturbing reason why Muslim countries don't help Palestine. Did you see this? Did you watch this? This is something that we covered. And with a long history of Muslim leaders that have been assassinated, or coups that have been created, or invasions that have been incited by the Zionist state. It's a historical fact. And then you have just recently Ismail Haniyeh. Before him, you had the founder of Hamas, Ahmad Yassin, assassinated with a missile after he was coming from Fajr prayer in Gaza. Was assassinated, and 9 other Muslims were killed in the masjid because of a missile that was fired after Fajr prayer, or near the masjid, maybe not in the masjid. Now, Israel is issuing death threats against Erdogan, assassination threats against Erdogan. So Erdogan has made some symbolic statements against Netanyahu, against Israel. They're symbolic, and, you know, we should ask, well, where's the actual follow-up? How much more, saber rattling can you do before you actually take action? But at least it's something, It's not like some of these traitor regimes that don't say anything, or they support Israel, or they want to sign the Abrahamic Alliance and, build more, an embassy for Israel in their territory. At least Turkey is not doing anything like that. At least they're symbolically showing opposition to the terror state. But what does the Israeli, what do Israeli politicians respond with? A death threat. And there is one politician who is saying that we're going to do to Erdogan what we did to Saddam. Oh yeah, just no shame, just openly threatening world leaders. Yeah, we're just going to kill you. It's going to kill you. No problem. This is the lawlessness, the criminality, the sense of entitlement, like they own the whole world, like they're the masters and everyone else are the slaves. Oh, you dare to oppose us? Well, we're just going to kill you. Simple as. This is Erdogan. Oh, the other thing that I didn't mention about Israel assassinating Ismail Haniyeh in Iran, as opposed to other places that they could have done it, is that it also seems to imply that they were responsible for assassinating the previous Iranian president, Ibrahim Raisi. He was in a helicopter. The helicopter crashed. It seemed very strange, shady circumstances, what actually happened. But maybe this is a signal. Maybe this is a signal that Israel is giving the world, their calling card, you could say. Hey, look, how easily we took out. Because if you can plant a bomb in a room in the most secure compound in Iran, in Tehran, of the Revolutionary Guard, is it really that hard to create a technical mishap on a helicopter? Maybe the helicopter, maybe the engine was tampered with. Maybe there was some kind of guidance system that was tampered with. Is it really that difficult if you can plant a bomb in such a secure building within Iran to tamper with a helicopter that's parked in some hangar, some airport hangar? Like that would be relatively trivial. And that reminded me of the case of President Mohammad Zia-ul-Haq of Pakistan. The 6th president of Pakistan died in an aircraft crash on August 17th, 1988. So this was also a shady helicopter crash that took out Zia-ul-Haq. And there are some who accused Israel. Actually, you can go on this Wikipedia page under other hypotheses. Let me expand it. So, let's see. Writing in the fall 2005 issue of World Policy Journal, former U.S. Ambassador to India John Gunther Dean blamed Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, for orchestrating Zia's assassination in retaliation for Pakistan developing a nuclear weapon to counteract India and to prevent Zia, an effective Muslim leader, from continuing to influence U.S. foreign policy. However, Dean said he had no proof for his assertion. Yeah, when you are a ambassador and you are part of the U.S. government, there's a lot of information that you have that you can't just come out and say, oh, here's the proof, here are the documents, because that's illegal and you put yourself in a lot of trouble. But you can always hypothesize, you can speculate, right? It's speculation. I think maybe, I think my theory is that it was actually Mossad behind this. And really, you know who was behind it, but you can't say that you know who was behind it. So, sorry. Who is calling me? I hope it wasn't Mossad calling me. Anyway, yeah, so President Zia al-Haq was an effective Muslim leader. So you got to take him out. You got to take out the effective Muslim leaders. Why? Because you don't want effective Muslim leadership creating this Muslim alliance, this pan-Islamist alliance across the Muslim world. That's going to be a problem for Israel. So you have to prevent that preemptively. You take out the effective Muslim leaders like Zia al-Haq, who had been signaling his desire to implement Sharia, even hudud in Pakistan. There's the hudud ordinance that came under Zia al-Haq. You have to take out these leaders. He was also saying that he wanted nuclear weapons to share with the rest of the Muslim world. That's a disaster for Israel. No one can have nuclear weapons in the Middle East except for Israel, right? Even though that is contrary to international law and non-proliferation agreements that Israel never signed, by the way, but no one can have nuclear weapons. So Pakistan got it. That's why Pakistan has to be under complete control. What happened to Imran Khan? Imran Khan indicates that he's not going to be as aligned with the West. He's looking east. He's looking for some balance with the East. He's looking for more of a role of Islam in Pakistan in the government. What happens to Imran Khan? Do you think that Israel is not involved? So we see that constantly this is the policy, especially post-Arab Spring. Post-Arab Spring, when there is this possibility, there's a possibility of these Arab countries, especially being led by Islamists, people who want Islamic government, people who want pan-Islamic unity. This is a significant threat to Israel. So that revolution, that uprising, that spring, it has to be neutralized. And that's what they did. That's what they did. And they created this regime throughout the Middle East that will stomp any semblance of Islamic, pan-Islamic goals, pro-Palestinian goals, pro-Palestinian vision, a vision of a unified Muslim ummah, bringing Islamic law, bringing Sharia, even like Ikhwan. Like Ikhwan, I have a lot of criticism of Ikhwan. Okay, Ikhwan, they reform a lot of Islam, unfortunately. Like you can call them like the conservatives of Islam. Like you have the conservatives of America, people who are like, well, I don't agree with children getting transgender surgery or hormone therapy, but I support your right if you're an adult to get trans surgery, and I support gay marriage. Like that's a conservative. Like you have conceded on the LGBT issue, for example, or the feminism issue, or whatever it may be. The Ikhwan are like that for Muslims. Like we wouldn't agree with many of the things that Ikhwan actually propose. They're reformists in many ways. But even that is too extreme. Like, even that is too much to allow to exist in the Muslim world. Why? Because Ikhwan are pro-Palestine liberation. Ikhwan want to see Palestine liberated. They want to see the occupied territories to be liberated. And that is why Ikhwan has to be stifled. They have to be assassinated. Their president, who wins a fair election in Egypt, Mohamed Morsi, has to be arrested and subjected to torture, and where he eventually dies in prison. This is how they treat Ikhwan, and they've banned Ikhwan. And if you're Ikhwani, then you're like a terrorist. Even though they're liberal in many ways. They support democracy, for example. They think that we can have representational democracy, and do we really need to implement Sharia? There's room to debate on these things, in terms of the extent, do we apply the Sharia immediately, or should it be done step by step according to whatever? So I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong. That's deviance. But still, Ikhwan are targeted. And the other thing is that Ikhwan are effective. They can rally popular support. They can get this kind of backing from the people. It's a populist movement. That's why it has to be destroyed. Same with Hamas. Hamas was elected in 2006. The Palestinians voted for Hamas. And what is Hamas? Hamas is obviously influenced by Ikhwan, but Hamas wants Islamic unity. Hamas has this kind of pan-Islamic identity. They want Islam. They have to be eliminated. You assassinate their leaders. And Ismail Haniyeh was the latest one. So it's just constant coup, assassination. Erdogan was also couped in 2016. He was also couped. It wasn't a successful coup, but Erdogan is a effective Muslim leader, exactly like the Wikipedia page said about Muhammad Zia al-Haq. He's an effective Muslim leader. Therefore, we have to eliminate him. Let's get him out of office through a coup. So Israel often does this as well. It sides with secularists. And this is part of the Rand plan as well. The Moderate Muslim Network's paper writes about this, that the West should align with the moderates and the secularists. So that's what they've been doing against any kind of effective Muslim leader. Now you can, again, have your criticisms of Erdogan, many criticisms that we can give of Erdogan, but he's still seen as effective. And effective, it's like a low bar. To be an effective Muslim leader, you just have to be willing to say no to the West every now and then. Just every now and then say, yeah, I'm sorry, United States, but I'm not going to do X, Y, or Z because it's contrary to the interests of my people, the Muslim people. So I'm not going to go with that. I'll do other things for you. I'll do other things, but I'm not. There's a red line. I can't throw my own people under the bus. That's like the low bar of effective Muslim leadership that we don't even have. We can't even have that. We can't have nice things as some of these people say on Reddit. We can't have nice things. Even that is too much. No. The leader of your country has to say yes to everything that the U.S. and by extension Israel says. If you don't say yes to everything that we want when we want it, expect to be assassinated, expect to be couped, expect a civil war to break out. This is why we don't have effective Muslim leaders. Other countries, like China, for example, bring all the criticisms of the CCP that you want. I have many criticisms of the CCP, how they are, their oppression of the Uyghurs, the Uyghur Muslims. Yes, of course, we criticize. But at least the Chinese government acts on behalf of the Chinese people in terms of their interests. And sometimes they say to the U.S., no. Sometimes to Israel, they say no. Same for Russia. You can criticize Russia and Vladimir Putin all day. No problem. I have my own critique. And, A lot of what they're doing is completely evil and against Muslims, and we condemn them and we hate them for that, for their killing and their oppression of Muslims. But you can't deny that Vladimir Putin, he makes decisions on the basis of the interests of the Russian people. Sometimes he tells the United States, no, I don't accept that. We don't have Muslim leaders that say no. We don't have Muslim leaders that say no. That's the problem. For the sake of the interests of the Ummah. Or not even the Ummah, even the Muslims within their own countries. Just make a decision in terms of the Muslims in your own countries. We don't have Muslim leaders like that. And when we do have Muslim leaders who approach that, like Erdogan, for example, or Morsi, for example, or Rashid Ghannouchi, for example, in Tunisia, Muammar Gaddafi, maybe you could say, have your criticisms of him. But he said no at some point. They take him out. They will take you out. They'll create a civil war. They'll create a coup. They will incite and inflame and create deaths, hundreds of thousands of deaths at times, millions of deaths at other times of Muslims. This is why we don't have effective leaders. Now, another point that I want to bring up before I get back to the super chats is a brilliant point that was made by MuslimSkeptic team member and meme maker extraordinaire, our brilliant brother Muslim Scion. Here's his Twitter page. Make sure you go follow Muslim Scion. A lot of the memes that you see from MuslimSkeptic, pretty much 99% of them, are from Muslim Scion. And his memes are shared by other accounts and they go viral. Every day I see a meme like from some non-Muslim account sharing a Muslim Scion meme. And you can see the MuslimSkeptic watermark on it, so you know it's from him and from MuslimSkeptic. Every day his memes are going viral. This is how brilliant Muslim Scion is. This is the mind of Muslim Scion. He's a beautiful brother, mashallah. And he pointed out something, like he was saying that, I've been thinking a lot about this issue of Shia Sunni allyship. And you know what? It's parallel to another important allyship that we need, that we must have, and that is allyship between Bangladesh and Pakistan. Bangladeshi Muslims and Pakistani Muslims need to unite against who? The common enemy, which is the BJP, the Hindu extremists of India. What are the Hindu extremists doing in India? They're killing Muslims, they're lynching Muslims, they're oppressing Muslims, they're banning the hijab, they're raping Muslims and our Muslim sisters, they're occupying Kashmir, they're harassing and brutalizing and killing our brothers and sisters in Kashmir. We need a united bloc. Pakistan, Bangladesh. Why is that not happening? And then you have people in Bangladesh who are saying things like, well, how can we ally with Pakistan? Don't you know about the 1971 war? Don't you know how many Bangladeshis were killed by Pakistan? This is unacceptable. We cannot ally with those traitors. Pakistan has killed more Bangladeshis than India. Therefore, we will never ally with Pakistan. And if you suggest to ally with Pakistan, that makes you a traitor. You're a Rajakar. That's the term that they use. And now, alhamdulillah, many youth in Bangladesh and students are co-opting that term. Yeah, I am a Rajakar. Yeah, I am. You can't bully me with these labels. And we'll cover more, by the way, of the crackdown, brutal crackdown. Perhaps over 1,000 students or many more thousands killed by the Bangladeshi government cracking down on students protesting their corruption. But look at this, this is from Wikipedia. 1971 war. Bengalis attacked. 300,000 to 3 million deaths. 200,000 to 400,000 women raped. Who? By whom? Pakistan. So how can we ever ally as Bangladeshis, as Bengalis, with Pakistan? So this is the thing. We're talking about the future. We're talking about what is going to matter. So these numbers, by the way, could be exaggerated. And they could be exaggerated in a way exactly to prevent any type of cooperation between Pakistan and Bangladesh. So these numbers, by the way, are politicized. I want to give that caveat. We shouldn't take these numbers without a grain of salt. 3 million really? Pakistan killed 3 million Bengalis and raped, almost 500,000. Take it with a grain of salt. But the point is that these numbers are what are used to prevent something that is in the interest of both Pakistan and Bangladesh. And the same is this case between Shia and Sunni, between Iran and the Sunni world. Yes, Iran is responsible for a lot of Sunni deaths. There are Sunnis who are responsible for many Shia deaths. Look at the Saudi siege of Yemen. How many Shia in Yemen, Zaydi Shia, were killed because of Sunni Saudis' belligerence, ongoing belligerence, by the way. Famine also caused in Yemen. That was Sunni against Shia. So therefore, we can never ally, we can never work together against this existential threat that's far greater in terms of the damage that it does, far greater than the death and destruction that it causes, the Zionist threat. This is irrational. It's irrational and it's immoral and it's contrary to the Quran and Sunnah. It is contrary to the Quran and Sunnah. And you have many examples, and some of the examples are given by ulama. There was a clip that I shared from Sheikh Uthman al-Khamis. Sheikh Uthman al-Khamis, he is a sheikh, very senior, well-respected, and he's in Kuwait, I believe. And he made a point that, look, even he is advocating from Kuwait that we need to have alliance with the Shia, and there's no problem with this. And he's basically defending Hamas. He's defending Hamas. He's defending the Palestinian resistance overall, saying, yeah, they need to. Hamas, as Sunnis, they need to take the support of whoever will support them. If that's the Iranians, okay, no problem. And there is a precedent for this from the life of the Sahaba, specifically when it comes to Umar, radiallahu anhu. Because Umar, at a time of instability, allied with some of the groups who did have deviant views at that time. They were part of the Ridda Wars under Sayyidina Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu. They were under different groups that were considered deviant. But Umar made a decision because there was a greater threat to unify in order to stamp out that threat at that particular time. And this is the example that Sheikh Uthman al-Khamis brought up. And maybe I can find that clip. You can look on my Twitter. So this is what I have to say about Iran. And a lot of you, maybe not a lot, some of you will not like it. A lot of you are electronic flies or bots, and your whole purpose is to support Zionism for the Israeli state. You're under one of these puppet regimes, and you're literally getting paid, $10 an hour to tweet on my social media. So I don't really care what you think. And there's no argument that is being brought. Here's something that, the Madkhalis really won't like. Did you know that Sheikh al-Azhar, Ahmed al-Tayyib, the Sheikh of al-Azhar, came out and started praising Haniya, Ismail Haniya, praising him, and, this is interesting. Why? Because we know who is in charge of Egypt, and they're not in favor of Ikhwan. Obviously, they've outlawed Ikhwan, but Hamas is tied to Ikhwan al-Muslimin. So for Ahmed al-Tayyib to be praising Ismail Haniya, the leader of Hamas, and it's not just like one or two things. He said a lot in favor of Ismail Haniya, kind of eulogizing him. So the Madkhalis And these regimes, these puppet regimes, they're not really going to be happy about Ahmed al-Tayyib. So, praising Ismail Haniyeh. But it happened. Another point. Where's that other tweet I had? I'll have to pull that up. In the meantime, if you have a super chat, go ahead and put it in. And I'll read it. Because the rest of the show, I think I covered most of what I wanted to cover. But if there's anything else that comes to mind, I'll share it. But for the rest of the show, I'm pretty much going to focus on your comments and reacting to what you're saying. Yeah, so the people who spurg out about what I say about Iran, they can never answer this. They can never follow this logic. And I tweeted this some months ago. Okay. This isn't the post I wanted. Yeah, you can read this post. Just do a search. Iran is as evil as or worse than Israel. Prove it. And I already gave the argument. This is not what I wanted to share. Where's that other tweet? Give me 1 second. Oh, okay, here it is. Okay, this is the tweet. Okay, logically, you can't accept all three propositions. So, proposition number 1, Palestinian resistance groups are beautiful, brave defenders of Masjid al-Aqsa and the Ummah, and they should be praised. See a lot of people, a lot of Muslims on social media, they are against the terrorist state and they love those who fight and resist the genocide and the occupation of the terrorist state. As they should. That's number 1. Proposition number 2. It is wrong and a betrayal for Sunnis to ally with Iran and take support from them, and whoever does so should be condemned. So that's proposition number 2. So this is what they say against me. They say, Daniel, you are a traitor to the Ummah. You're saying that Iran should be allied with. You are a traitor. Don't you know all the blood that has been shed by Iran? Blah, blah, blah. So that's proposition number 2. Proposition number 3. The Palestinian resistance groups have allied with Iran and take resources from them. So all of these 3 things are irreconcilable. You can't accept all 3. I mean, number 3 is a fact that Palestinian groups have allied with Iran and take resources from them. But point number 1, if you think that they're beautiful, this is a beautiful resistance, you support them, they're fighting for the Ummah, they're fighting for Masjid al-Aqsa, guess what? They're also taking support from Iran. So if you want to say that whoever takes support from Iran or whoever wants to ally with Iran is a traitor, then you also have to think that the Palestinian resistance are a group of traitors, a group of deviants, a group of secret Shia, a group of secret agents of Iran. That's what the Medkhalis say. That's what the Muslim Zionists actually do say. So they're, at least those Zionists, those Muslim Zionists are consistent. They're consistent in their hatred. But if you actually love those who fight for the Ummah, who fight for Masjid al-Aqsa, who fight against genocide, if you love them as you should, as every Muslim should, then you have to also accept that they're taking support from Iran. They're taking support and they're working with them in this material way. So which is it? Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too, or eat your cake and have it too. So if you have and the thing is that you can condemn Iran. I do condemn Iran. Iran killing Sunnis, this is wrong. This is something evil. This regime is committing terrorism against Sunnis, and we reject that. We condemn that. But the way that we get past that, in the sense of we prevent further death, we prevent further massacres, further terrorism, is that we create allyships. We create a joint bloc that faces the bigger existential threat that is responsible for many, many, many times more deaths and more destruction, and threatens the future of Islam. Not just the future of Muslim bodies, but also the future of Islam, meaning Muslim souls. That is Israel. And if you want to claim that, well, Iran, they're not even Muslim, that's not the position I have. And the majority position of ulama, the dominant position of Sunni ulama, is not to do mass takfir of Shia. So the majority of Sunni ulama, including Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, they do not do mass takfir of Shia or Rawafid. They don't. So Iran is a Muslim nation. Iran is a Muslim nation. But even if you don't consider them a Muslim nation, you are fine with allying with non-Muslims. That's something that is allowed in Islam as well. And the irony is some of these people who support Saudi, or they support the UAE, and they say that Iran is non-Muslim, and they mass takfir Shia in Iran, and they say we need to wipe Iran off the map. And if you ally with Iran, you're a traitor to the Ummah. They have no problem allying with the U.S. and Israel, or even just the U.S. How many Muslims has the U.S. killed? And obviously they're not Muslim. It's a non-Muslim nation, if you hadn't heard. So there's no consistent principle. There's no consistent logic. And that's what happens when you try to defend Zionism and you support Zionism, as some of these Madkhalis do. Some of these Madkhali agents do. They're celebrating right now. They're celebrating the assassination of Muslim leaders, effective Muslim leaders. So that is our situation, unfortunately. You know, it's just aggravating and it's annoying dealing with people who don't think. You know, just think for a second, be consistent. And that's the nature of the believer. The believer is not stung from the same hole twice. We know this hadith, that the believer is not stung from the same hole twice. What does that mean? The only way that you don't get stung from the same hole twice is if you have pattern recognition. This is Sahih hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, that the believer does not get stung from the same hole twice. You have to have pattern recognition. The believer has to have pattern recognition. The believer has to have intelligence, because you got burned once. You got stung once. So you have to have the minimal amount of intelligence to act in a way not to get burned twice, not to get burned a second time. That's the minimum level of intelligence that you have to have as a believer. And this is coming from the Prophet ﷺ. Yet you have some of these Muslims that they have not only gotten stung twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times. They continuously are getting stung and burned and destroyed for generations. And they still don't get it. They still don't understand what's happening. This is a intellectual failing because you don't have pattern recognition, but it's also a moral failing. It's also a moral failing because there are Muslims dying. There are Muslims getting killed because of your incompetence and your stupidity. That's what Israel wants. Israel wants the Muslim world to be controlled by idiots at best. Even idiots, sometimes a clock can be right twice a day, right? So even idiots, maybe that's too much for Israel. No, you have to have active traitors. You have to have active hypocrites and traitors in control, and the most evil shayateen in control of the Muslim world. That's what they want. But then what about your excuse? What is your excuse for being stupid? That's what those of you who are constantly talking this nonsense trash should ask yourself. Okay, so let's look at the super chats. after that rant. So, Best Ahmed's, thank you for your super chat. He says, good point about infiltration. Scary to think that Zionists are in higher ups of Iranian government. Respect from Tajikistan. Khuda Hafiz. Thank you, brother, from Tajikistan. May Allah give you great blessing there in that beautiful country. Watermelon says, I've heard that Iran has had mass apostasy from Shiism. What percentage do you think are still Muslim? There's definitely a lot of apostasy. How does it compare with other places? Maybe there's more than other Muslim countries. This is because Shiism is very weak compared to Sunnism in certain respects. So that's what spurs more apostasy amongst Shia. But percentage, I don't know. I also don't think it's like mass apostasy. But you have liberalization. And this is also part of the reason why you don't want wilayat al-faqih. Like wilayat al-faqih, when you have the ulama involved with the government, then when the government makes decisions that people don't like, they blame Islam. When a government will inevitably have to make policy decisions that a large percentage of the population won't like. That's just the nature of politics and governance. So they will, instead of attacking you or thinking that lesser of you as the ruler, they start thinking less of Islam because you're the alim, you're the scholar, you're supposed to be the most pious. So even if the government is not corrupt, people start attacking or blaming Islam for the failings of the government or for even decisions that they don't agree with, policies that they don't agree with. This is why when we look at historically, there has been a separation in the sense that the ulama avoided positions of rulership. They avoided positions of authority. They even avoided going to the rulers and being associated with the rulers. And this is coming from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As the scholar gets closer to the gates of the ruler, he gets farther and farther away from the gates of paradise. This is a very stark warning. If you're an alim, to avoid power, because power can corrupt. It can corrupt you, and it can allow you to be manipulated to make rulings or to give fatwa in defense of the indefensible, because the ruler is pressuring you to issue those fatwa, to give those rulings. And you corrupt Islam in that way. And this is why we have many ulama in prison. Why? Because they refuse to compromise the deen for the sake of what the rulers wanted. And so the rulers punished them by putting them in prison. This is why we have scholars in prison now. May Allah free them in countries like Saudi. But also historically, all of the great ulama, almost all of them, were imprisoned at some point because they would refuse to bend the knee for the governments, for the rulers. And that's the sunnah. But Iran has gone contrary to the sunnah. They have put, their scholars, their fuqaha, their faqih, at the head of the government. This causes people to hate Islam or to blame Islam for the country's problems, because you have an alim. The alim is the representative of Islam. They're the inheritors of the Prophet. He's ruling the country, and they're making all these problems for us. Therefore, we blame the ulama. It's a bad policy, and it's a bid'ah, one of the major bid'ahs that they have instituted in Iran. So those of you who are claiming that I'm an Iranian agent, explain that rant, okay? Explain what I just said, calling the essence and the core of the Islamic Republic of Iran's government, calling it a deviance. How could I be an agent of Iran and speak like this? By Islamically undermining, their government. Still, I think that what they're doing is a real opposition to the Israeli state. And the proof is, look at Netanyahu coming to Congress. The majority of his speech is talking about Iran because that's his enemy. Iran is the enemy. So even if Iran is your enemy, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And the big enemy, we know who the big enemy is. That's the Zionist state. What is wrong in wars? Even Islam allows? Well, I didn't say there's anything wrong with wars. I don't know what this is. Can you cover Muslim dating app Muzz? It likes to share info from Yaqeen Institute, or as I call it, Yes Queen Simstitute, and Muslim Matters and others to justify its liberal values. And this is Conserve Matrimony. I don't know what info they're sharing, but there's like a million of these apps, these dating apps, and Muzz, like, they're very liberal. I don't recommend that trash. Let's see. Do you believe Iran would respond, and how so? Oh, walaikum assalam, brother. Modern dawah. And what about Turkey's threats? All talk again? Jazakallah khair. I think Iran will have a coordinated response. I think they will have a coordinated strike. Their first strike seemed to be just a way to map out the Israeli air defense systems. They just tried to flood that system to map out where are their vulnerable spots. So they're probably going to try to exploit that with a strike. They're probably going to be coordinating with Hezbollah, obviously, and the Houthis as well. Houthis have had a couple of strikes in Tel Aviv that were successful using drones. So we'll see. But the response should be imminent. Like, they're forced to respond because of how embarrassing it is to have, you know, such a high-ranking official assassinated within one of your most guarded compounds. So it seems like there's probably going to be an airstrike. And about Turkey, will Turkey actually do anything? Probability is low at this point. Probability is low. We'll see, inshallah. Let's see. I agree, but a general question that I have is that I've heard that due to kufr beliefs, the Ayatollah and others don't count as Muslims. Is this true? Well, the principle when it comes to takfir for Shia specifically is there has to be a specific belief that they have and they express that takes them out of Islam very clearly. So what is the belief that takes these Ayatollahs out of Islam? If you say, well, they reject the Sahaba, that's not true. They don't reject all of the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is a distinction that Sunni scholars throughout history have made. Like Subki, for example, rahimahullah. Imam Subki makes, I shared the passage and the translation, makes this distinction. I shared it on Telegram, on my Telegram channel. So subscribe to that if you're not there. You can just do a search for Subki and it'll come up. But he says that rejecting all of the Sahaba, that's kufr because the Quran legitimates the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to say that all of the companions are rejected, then that is kufr because it's going against the Quran. You can disagree and even insult companions. This is a crime. This is evil. This is fisq. This is disgusting, and we hate it. But does that count as kufr? So the scholars are nuanced about this. Like, there's a nuanced discussion that says that, well, what is the nature of the insult? Because when you look at certain insults, does that, like, you believe in Allah, you believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you believe in the Quran, you have all of the required beliefs to make you a Muslim, to make you a believer. What will actually nullify that belief? Does insulting a Sahabi count as kufr? In some cases, yes. For example, if you insult our mother Aisha radiallahu anha and you accuse her of committing a certain deed, that is kufr. Why? Because the Quran itself has exonerated our mother Aisha radiallahu anha and defended her honor. So if you are insulting her and accusing her of something that goes against the Quran, that is kufr. That means that you are not a Muslim. So those Shia who do insult our mother Aisha radiallahu anha and accuse her of that act, they have gone against the Quran. They're not Muslim. They're not Muslim, and you can say that. It's uncontroversial. But so there are these nuances. You can't just make mass takfir of Shia. I remember when I was growing up, I identified as a Shia. What I thought was the main idea of being Shia, and what I thought it meant to be a Shia as opposed to a Sunni, is the succession after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That Ali, radiallahu anhu, was the successor after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. That was what I thought. And later I found out these other beliefs. And I found out about them because I started reading these Shia books. But I had no clue about like the idea, other kufr beliefs that you find within the Shia tradition. And that's the thing. The Shia tradition is so varied. And that's like the issue with a lot of these sects, is that it's so varied. There are so many different beliefs, and it's not an organized tradition in that way that we find in Sunni Islam. And it's evolving. It's an evolving tradition. And that's one complication. The other complication is that the majority of the Shia don't have any clue about these beliefs. Like you can find in some Shia books the idea that Jibril alayhi salam, the angel, continued to bring revelation after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, continued to bring Quran. You find narrations like that. Now, do the Shia actually believe that? No. Like the average Shia that you go to in Iran or elsewhere, you tell them, oh, did you know about this narration? They'll say, what are you talking about? Never heard this in my life. So how can you make takfir of that person? Like, yes, you can say that they have deviant beliefs. This is Ahlul Bid'ah, etc. And that is the dominant majority position. Now there's a question about what about their teachers? What about the Ayatollah? What about their imams? Because their imams are more educated. Their imams are more aware of these narrations and these things in their books, and they insist upon being Shia. Are they disbelievers? Again, there's ikhtilaf. There's amongst Sunni scholars, there's a difference of opinion. And you have even contemporary scholars, contemporary Salafi scholars, like Sheikh Al-Albani, the Albanian scholar, who would not even make takfir of their imams. Even their ayatollahs, he would not make takfir. He said, no, you have to have something specific. You have to have something specific that it's clear that they believe and that that person, that individual Shia has expressed, for then it to be valid to make takfir of that one particular individual Shia. So there's nuance to all these. But keep in mind that this nuance is contrary to the Zionist interest. The Zionist interest is for there to be no nuance. The Zionist interest is that we need to all just mass takfir Shia, and Shia need to mass takfir Sunnis, and we need to say that, oh, the Shia blood is halal, and the Sunnis and the Shia to say the Sunni blood is halal, and vice versa, and for us to launch wars and to fight each other to death. That is what the Zionists want. That's what Israel wants. And some of you, unfortunately, are playing into their hands. Explain yourself. Some super chats here talking about certain governments that let's just, like in the Gulf. So those kinds of accusations, let's keep it off of the show. Right. Oh, here, let's see. Right before Qasem Soleimani was assassinated by U.S. Israel, he was in Iraq with the prime minister for potential peace talks with the Saudi government. This was buried by the media. Yeah. Anytime the idea of Iran and Saudi joining hands, this is a threat, big threat to Israel. They want to frustrate that or sabotage it in whatever way they can. Imagine the UAE and Saudi betraying is not real. Wouldn't that be such a glorious turn of events? Inshallah, we can make dua that happens soon. Thank you, Brother Omar, for your generous super chat. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Brother Amir, for your generous super chat. Tiger says anti-Iran arguments only work in favor of the West. It depends on the type of argument. I just made a lot of arguments against Iran in this show, didn't I? Again, I attacked or I criticized Wilayat al-Faqih. That's their underlying philosophy. I attacked it, but I'm in support of alliance with Iran. That is in the benefit and favor of the Ummah. And when Iran takes action against this Zionist state, I'm happy about it. I'm happy about it. I'm not like one of these idiots who is like, oh, Iran is actually a secret Zionist front. Iran is actually secretly Zionist. It's all just a show. Right? So this is, I'll praise Iran. If Saudi starts taking action, inshallah, Saudi Arabia, take action against the terrorist state, drop normalization, any possibility of normalization, actually make some moves, I'll praise them. I'll praise them and I'll give them the salute. If Dubai, if the UAE starts making moves, does a 180, gets out of this secularization mindset, and they start doing things against the terror state of Israel and do things in favor of the Ummah, I'm going to salute the UAE. I'm going to say, may Allah bless these rulers. May Allah bless these rulers who are going against the terrorism and the genocide, and they're supporting our Palestinian brothers and sisters. They're supporting the Ummah. I'll be the first to raise my hands in sincere dua, right? So this is not nationalism. We have to get out of this nationalistic mindset. We have to get out of this sectarian mindset. We have to face the challenges and the threats in this allied way. That's my message. Okay, not reading comments. I'll get this channel banned. Keep your comments respectful. They must be bots with such hateful comments towards unity and Israel or Palestine. Can the Medkhalis really be that stupid or that treacherous? Yeah, they're treacherous. They're really getting their money. Not going to read comments that are calling out rulers by name. Thank you for your super chat, Danny. Jazakallah khair, appreciate it. You're just making taqiyya. The Medkhalis, yeah, maybe. Let's see. Dictators are strategic assets of U.S. Oh, here's a good question. If ulama are not in government, then wouldn't evil people be in charge? How would you get good leadership? No, yeah, that I didn't clarify that point. This is a great question. The leaders are expected to follow Islam, right? And that pressure is from the people who are Muslim. They're good Muslims who believe in Islam. They understand Islam, and because of that, they want from their leaders good. And they pressure the leaders to support Islam and to do things according to Islam to support the Sharia. So like if a ruler comes and says, yeah, we're canceling Ramadan because fasting destroys productivity and we want to raise the GDP of the country, so no more fasting, the Muslims of that country are going to be against that ruler and say, this is kufr, you're violating Islam. That's the opposition that the ruler will get. So the ruler faces all this pressure to abide by Islam. The role of the ulama is to educate the people about what true Islam says, to educate people at what are the standards of Islam. Now, if those ulama start being involved in government, they're going to be corrupted, they're going to be influenced, and then some of them might have fatwa that says, well, actually, maybe in certain cases, it's acceptable to cancel Ramadan. Just fast Ramadan in your heart. No need to actually fast, just in your heart. And this is acceptable because, the fasting of Ramadan, that wasn't throughout the history of the Prophet ﷺ. Fasting was only revealed later in prophethood when there was the right circumstance. But prior to the revelation that, okay, you need to fast the entire month of Ramadan, they weren't fasting the entire Ramadan. They're only fasting on a couple of days in the year. So we can return to those times. Like, we're in that period now, the Meccan Islam. Like, these kinds of scholars for dollars, sellouts, reformists, they make those types of arguments, and they're getting paid by the government to make those kinds of arguments. They distort Islam for the people, and that's a much bigger problem. That kind of fasad. So this is why you don't want ulama in leadership or in government positions. You want the rulers to be abiding by the Sharia, but not necessarily the rulers to be ulama themselves. Khurshid, thank you for your super chat. Really appreciate it. You say it's heartening to see a Sunni scholar pragmatically advocate for Shia-Sunni political unity. Only the enemies of the Ummah would want otherwise. Yeah, you can say unity. I prefer the word allyship, making alliances. That is because unity sometimes might imply that, okay, we just forget that we have differences. So maybe allyship is a more appropriate term. And I'm not a scholar, obviously. Just your brother, Daniel. Thoughts on Pajit Zionist? Do an impression of Pajit. I have to work on that impression, so it's going to come off as extremely racist if I do an impression like that. So better not do that. Let's see. Mossad saying answer the call, Daniel. Yeah, better not answer that. Bahrainis are mostly against the decision of normalization. We didn't vote for that. Yeah, Bahrain, I know. That's the case with all these countries. You think that Saudi citizens want normalization? You think that the citizens of the UAE, the Muslims there, they want normalization? No, they're all against it. Or Sudan. Sudan was another one that was on the Abraham Accords. Or Morocco, they're on the Abraham Accords. You think that the Moroccans and the Sudanese, they want any type of normalization with Israel? Or Egypt normalized, what is it, 50 years ago? You think Egyptians want that? No, they're all opposed. I don't know what that even means. Salam, I'm a sister from Berlin, Germany. Your videos give me comfort in this anti-Islam society. Had to cut out a lot of my friends after learning they're Zionists. What are your thoughts on Candace Owens? Candace Owens is very brave. Candace Owens is a very brave black woman and obviously very intelligent. And she is saying so much against Israel and saying so much in support of Palestine and Palestinians. So we really appreciate what she has to say on these issues. And I'm surprised that she hasn't been banned. They're probably trying to find a way to ban her, but she's very popular. So banning her will come with a lot of backlash. You saw Ben Shapiro kick her out of the Daily Wire. That was great news. That was great news. The Zionist wire could not tolerate a truth teller like Candace Owens, at least on this Palestine issue. So Candace Owens is saying very good things, and we should support that. And her analysis is really good, politically on this Israel issue. So she's like waking up a lot of conservatives. And that is extremely impactful because the main U.S. support, like Israel is able to commit all of these crimes because the U.S. is supporting it. And the U.S. is supporting Israel because of the politicians here. The politicians, and more so the right wing, even though the left wing is really heavily supporting as well, but the right wing and the right wing base, which are conservatives and evangelical Christians who are on the right typically. So a lot of them subscribe to the Daily Wire, subscribe to Candace Owens. So for her to come out and criticize Israel and criticize the relationship of the United States to Israel, that is a huge blow. And people like Netanyahu are probably waking up in a cold sweat because they just had a nightmare about Candace Owens. Like they're literally thinking about her and figuring out a way to neutralize her. So people like that are in danger. Another person who has become a problem for the Zionist state, someone like Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson also, I don't agree with a lot of what he has to say. But Tucker Carlson did that interview with a Palestinian Christian. And this is sent massive shockwaves throughout the right wing. Why? Because you have for the first time a Palestinian Christian talking against Israel. And if you're an evangelical Christian, you have been fed this lie that as a Christian, you have to support the state of Israel. That's what God wants you to do. That's what Jesus wants you to do. You've been fed this lie because of Christian Zionism. We covered that in one of our first episodes. The second episode, we talked about Christian Zionism, the rise and fall of Christian Zionism. So now you have Tucker Carlson platforming a Palestinian Christian, denouncing the Israeli state and talking about how the Israeli state actually oppresses and terrorizes Christians, Palestinian Christians and otherwise. This was a bombshell, figurative bombshell for Israel. So that's what I think about Candace Owens. She's going to create she has been one of the big failures of Israel's public relations and their lobby in the U.S. because she has such a big reach for conservative Christians specifically. Shia believe that the Quran is created, and they don't believe that Allah is above the heaven on his throne. Shia came from all over the world to kill us. Nawasib in Syria, no to nationalism, Aqidah first. Okay, if you're saying no to nationalism, then what is this? If you're saying no to nationalism, so Shia believe that the Quran is created. Ask Shia what they think about the Quran being created. Probably never heard of this issue. I certainly hadn't heard of this. I didn't think that the Quran was created. I never had thought of this issue as a Shia. When I was Shia for the first 15 years of my life, 15 or 16 years, I didn't even know about this issue. I only heard about this issue when I studied Aqidah as a Sunni, this topic. So no, you can't do mass takfir of Shia on that issue. They don't believe that Allah is above heaven on his throne. What does that mean? Like, how can anyone deny that when it's the nas of the Quran? Or are you also doing takfir of, other Sunni groups who don't believe that literally Allah is above the throne? Because a lot of Sunnis also have that position. Shia came from all around the world to kill us. Yeah, we know about that. We know about the sectarian conflict. We know about the crimes of Shia in Syria. We know. I premised everything that I said with an acknowledgement of those crimes. But like a broken record, you just don't get the point. see. What are your thoughts on Shah supporters cucking for Israel? Yeah, they're scum. Obviously. What do I think of Hizb ut-Tahrir? They're calling for Khilafah. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. I don't know how many times Zayd ibn Amr was Meccan monotheist before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what? So what? Yeah, that was known. Go read, the Sirah. Go read about the pre-Islamic Arabia. This was known to Islam that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were other monotheists. They were Hanif, the Hanif religion, before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is not like some breakthrough. This is not like, oh, what a revelation. Explain this. The U.S. invaded Iraq and toppled the Saddam regime only to give it to Iran. How does that make sense? Do you think more than 2 seconds about these things that you're writing? Why would they want Iran to have control of Iraq? Whose interests would that serve? How does that serve U.S. interests? How does that serve Israel's interests? No, the policy of Israel, in accordance with the Yinon Plan, is to topple all of these regimes: the Iraqi regime, the Iranian regime. Any regime that shows any resistance to U.S.-Israeli policy has to be toppled. That's the policy. They're trying to topple Iran's regime as we speak. So, any other comments? Because we are getting close to 2 hours. IQ is dropping right now. I agree. The toppling of Saddam makes the point that U.S.-Israel want division. Dumbest argument I've read today. Exactly. Shout out to Chocolate Walla. Always making good comments. Who supported Iran against Iraq? Israel. Yeah, so there are some reports, but that's the thing. Like, you want both sides to be supported so that they destroy each other. So there was one famous quote by an interviewer where he asked an Israeli politician, so in this civil war in Syria, where you have Bashar on one side and you have the Syrian resistance on the other side, who do you want to win? The Syrian Resistance Liberation Forces or Bashar? And the Israeli politician said, I want both of them to lose. I want them to destroy each other. That's the whole point. If one side gets too strong, then you start supporting the other side and vice versa. That way you keep the civil war happening constantly without end. That's what they want. Can this lead to World War III, and how is this related to major signs of Yom Al-Qiyamah? Good question. World War III, yeah, if the U.S. becomes involved and maybe even puts boots on the ground, then Russia is probably going to get involved. China might get involved. If things escalate to that level, then yeah, we have a World War III situation potentially. So, as far as signs of Yom Al Qiyamah, Allahu Alam. Like, that's very speculative, and I hesitate to make any kind of concrete claim about how this is related to Yom Al Qiyamah, signs of the Day of Judgment. I'll have to think about it more, but obviously we know that the Prophet ﷺ told us that there's going to be a big war with Yahud. And this is very clear in Hadith. So what do you think is happening now? A big war. Is this the big war? Allahu A'lam. We will see. We'll see whether now or in the Akhirah. We will see. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Wa alaikum assalam. Love you and respect from India. It's sad that our brothers, sisters, children are being killed, murdered, and our so-called leaders are staying mute. Yeah, unfortunately. Thoughts on the replica of the Qubat al-Sakra Masjid in the UAE? Quba Masjid in UAE, I don't know about that. Not sure what that is or what the UAE did to replicate it. Yeah. Daniel either doesn't know about the situation in Iraq since 2003 or he pretends not to. What situation? Do you mean that Shia are in control? Yeah, I'm aware of that situation. I'm aware, but you didn't get the point. Like, what caused the situation? Who wanted Saddam to be toppled, first of all? Can you answer that? Can you answer that question? Man, I need a haircut. Hair is getting too long. Good thing I know a good barber. It's quite good. Good looking barber too, if I do say so. Inside joke for the Haqiqatjou regulars. Internet news. Charlie Moist Critical has quit his podcast because of the backlash he got for wanting 9-year-olds to cut the pee-pee. Sneeko cooked him so bad. Yeah, I heard about that. So it's called ending a career. It's a good job. The Ummah is headless, and this seems to be the root of our lack of unified direction and protection. Could you suggest practical step forwards? Yeah, the practical step is that we have to be better Muslims, because leadership is something that Allah grants. Allah grants the leadership, and He sends leaders by inspiring them, basically. And this is what we see from Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, with Bani Israel, actually, that they wanted a leader. Bani Israel wanted a leader, and then Allah sent them a leader, and they weren't happy about that, as you know from Surah Al-Baqarah. And they didn't follow him, and they didn't obey him. But that's the point. Like, the leadership is actually a blessing from Allah, and He sends leaders. And the practical thing to do as an ummah is that we have to correct ourselves. We have to get better as being Muslims by, number one, being committed to Islam. Are we actually committed to Islam fully? Or have you adopted a secularized, liberalized, feminist understanding of what Islam is? If you have this kind of, you think that Islam is compatible with liberal democracy, and you think that, well, Islam, there's no need for khilafah, there's no need for sharia, there's no need for Islamic law, religion is just what you have in your heart and what you practice at home privately. Okay, I have bad news for you. You've been secularized. This is not what Islam is. And unfortunately, many Muslims suffer from this misunderstanding or even outright deviance, because they have secularized Islam in their hearts and minds. So correcting that, how about we have an ummah that wants leadership, an ummah that prays for leadership, prays for khilafah? How about that as a minimum? How about that as a practical step? How about making dua for a khalifa? Unfortunately, you wouldn't imagine the number of religious Muslims. They claim to be religious. They claim to be scholars. And they will say, oh, khilafah is not important. We don't need this. This is not necessary. So, unfortunately, we have these kinds of parasites who have this kind of attitude towards Muslim leadership. What are we doing to counteract that? How about that? That's a practical step for you. It's sad that the main issue for us right now is Rafa Yadain in compulsory prayers, raising the hands in prayers. If loud Ameen is compulsory after Fatiha, we call ourselves Muslims, but we're divided in firqa. Brotherhood is missing. Yeah, these are fiqh issues of ikhtilaf. So, to divide on the basis of valid ikhtilaf, even within Sunniism, that is a true embarrassment, but it's a boon to the Zionists. The Zionists don't even want... You can be a Sunni, you can be a Hanafi, an Ash'ari, and you still have, this kind of fight. Okay, yeah, there's room for debate, disagreement. I'm not saying everyone should just say we're all the same. No, have a debate, have a disagreement. But that shouldn't affect, or that shouldn't threaten, the viability and the existence of the ummah, of the Muslims. If it does threaten the existence of the Muslims, you're arguing and you're debating, then that's a problem. Put the debate to the side for a minute, whether you want to have a debate about saying Ameen in Salah out loud. Have that debate. It's a fiqh debate. Go ahead. No problem. But if that debate is going to put the ummah in threat, put even one Muslim's life under threat because of having that debate, then it's a problem. Then it's something that you have to fear Allah. You have to fear Allah. Allah didn't give us the right to break ties with other Muslims on the basis of when it's threatening the safety and the lives of other Muslims. Where are you getting this? All right, guys. So we're about 2 hours. A lot of comments coming in, but I need to go and get a haircut. Got an appointment with that barber. It's hot. It's summer, so having a lot of hair is not the best. Having long hair can get aggravating. But I appreciate all of your comments, and I hope you appreciated the analysis. We're going to have more Haqiqat shows coming up, some big ones that I've been preparing for, in depth. So we're going to have another in-depth Haqiqat show where we'll go and talk about some of the principles of Islamic reform. A lot of times I mention Islamic reform, but we want to go into the weeds and look at the details of what does Islamic reform actually mean? How is Islamic reform undertaken, like in terms of arguing, in terms of fiqh, in terms of Islamic law? We want to look at that. So that's an upcoming episode. We're going to refute some of these modernists, basically. Some of these reformists, some of them you might know. They're quite popular. So inshallah, that's going to be exciting episode. But stay tuned for the announcements. As always, again, you can subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the newsletter. It's linked down below on MuslimSkeptic.com. Help us grow out that email list. It'll really help Muslim Skeptic. I appreciate all of your super chats. Make dua for the ummah, make dua for leadership, make dua for your brother Daniel, and for the whole Muslim Skeptic team. We really appreciate it. And inshallah, we will catch you on the next episode of Haqiqatjou. And with that, I bid you assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.